Hey Collective, welcome back. I hope you're having a good day today. So watching the news can make you feel like you're going crazy. It's like herding cattle on a mass level. You hear one thing about your health and safety on the news, then a government agency says the complete opposite. A product is recalled, but you're told the system is safer than ever. One report tells you a food is dangerous, another just tells you to wash it properly. This isn't just in your head. It's a pattern. You could call it a form of mass gaslighting, where the communication itself is designed to make you doubt your own perception of reality. And you know, if you've been here a little while, I don't like that shit from anyone. It doesn't have to be some single malicious plan to deceive you. Often, it's the messy result of bureaucratic communication, public relations, and battles over the official story. But the effect is the same. You're left feeling confused, anxious, and questioning your own judgment. Time to open your eyes and your minds as I break down the psychological techniques being used, often in plain sight, to distort how you see the world. Let's talk about framing, omission, and contradictory narratives that they use to control what you think and feel about your own health and safety. This constant feeling of unreality isn't just frustrating, it's corrosive. When you can't get a straight answer about what's safe to eat or what risks you actually face, the foundation of public trust starts to crumble. This is more than a communications problem. It's a psychology one. The result, whether it's intended or not, can be a state of learned helplessness. If every issue is presented as impossibly complex with experts constantly disagreeing and official stories contradicting what you see with your own eyes, you start to disengage. You might begin to think that you, as an individual, just aren't capable of understanding the world. So you stop asking questions. You become passive. This is the perfect environment for control. When people are confused and tired, they're more likely to accept the official story, whatever it may be, just to get some relief from the mental gymnastics. The fog of confusion makes it nearly impossible to make informed decisions for yourself and your family. It chips away at your sense of personal agency. But this fog isn't just a random weather pattern. It can be manufactured, created using a specific toolkit of psychological techniques designed to manage public perception. And once you learn to identify these tools, they start to lose their power. So let's look at the techniques at play. To see how this works, we need to look at the playbook. I'm going to focus on food safety because it's something I'm passionate about, and it's something that affects every single one of us, from the prisoners to the top 1%. Here are 3 of the most common techniques used to shape your reality. The first and most powerful tool is framing. Framing isn't about outright lying. It's about choosing which parts of the truth to put in the spotlight and which to leave in the shadows. By carefully selecting words and context, a communicator can guide you toward a particular conclusion without you even realizing it. For example, you'll often hear government officials and industry groups use some version of a very specific phrase. The American food supply is among the safest in the world. This is the frame. It's a broad, reassuring statement designed to inspire confidence in the system as a whole. It frames the entire conversation around systemic success. It's a comforting thought, repeated so often it feels like an undeniable truth. But here's the paradox, and probably the reason Norway shipped 2,000 pounds of their own food to the US for their time here at the World Cup. I get it. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, provides data that paints a different picture. According to CDC estimates, every year about 48 million people in the US get sick from foodborne diseases. That's roughly 1 in 6 Americans. Out of those, 128,000 are hospitalized, and a tragic 3,000 die. And that statistic probably doesn't even include people in the US prison system, which is considered a public health crisis. spending as little as $1 to $3 per day on food per person, feeding them from the trash, spoiled food, or bug-infested food that animals wouldn't even touch. And before you get on your ignorant, well, they are animals. Why do you think that they're in there? They don't deserve what we get on the outside. I'm not saying that they should be fed filet mignon every day. First, have a heart. Second, your judicial system sentenced them to do their time in that facility. They did not sentence them to death. My question is, if prison is no longer about rehabilitation, for teaching and learning a lesson, for reform, if prison is the death sentence now, why not just sentence them to death from the jump? Because killing a little over 472,000 people a year, which is how many individuals enter a state or federal prison with sentencing over a year in the United States, would probably seem inhumane to the rest of the world. Instead, it won't look as bad if we slowly kill them through starvation and malnutrition. Now, they may not be innocent, but they are still human beings. And that sounds a lot like certain World War II camps built for systemic mass murder to me. All while saying it's legal because of established laws and judicial sentencing. Come on now. What are we doing? But I digress. So, how can both be true? How can the food supply be among the safest while also sickening 48 million people a year? That's the magic of framing, friends. The safe supply statement frames those 48 million not as systemic failure, but as statistically acceptable background noise. The unavoidable cost of a massive complex system. The frame minimizes the problem. It subtly suggests that if you get sick, you're just an unfortunate statistic in an otherwise successful system. It directs your attention away from the 128,000 hospitalizations and toward the abstract idea of overall safety. The effect is powerful. It can shift the burden of responsibility, which is all any gaslighter really wants. Instead of questioning why the system allows for so much illness, the public is conditioned to accept this level of harm as normal. The problem is framed as managed, not unsolved. The next tool is strategic omission. If framing is what you put in the spotlight, omission is what you leave out of the picture. Sometimes the most powerful part of a message is what you're not told. This creates a partial reality that's much harder to debunk because it's not technically a lie. A classic example is how riskiest food lists are often presented. These lists, which frequently come from consumer advocacy groups or academic studies that analyze federal data, might highlight foods like leafy greens, eggs, or deli meats as frequent culprits in outbreaks. On the surface, this seems like helpful public information, but here's what's often missing from the public-facing summary. First, these lists don't always highlight consumption volume. Leafy greens are on the list, partly because we eat a phenomenal amount of them. So even a low contamination rate will lead to a high number of illnesses. Without that context, a consumer might be led to believe a salad is inherently more dangerous than a processed snack food, which may not be true per serving. More importantly, these lists often omit the why. The list tells you what food is risky, but often avoids a deep dive into the reasons. The focus on leafy greens as a category can distract from the role of industrial agricultural practices, like contaminated irrigation water or huge, centralized processing facilities that can turn a small contamination event into a multi-state crisis. It's easier to make people wary of spinach than it is to start a national conversation about reforming industrial agriculture. This technique is also used during food recalls. An agency will announce a recall for a product contaminated with something like listeria. The announcement itself is presented as proof the system is working, but key information is often missing from the initial alert. You might not be told how long the contaminated product was on store shelves before the recall. The full list of ingredient suppliers might not be released, meaning the source of the contamination could still be in other products. The recall announcement creates a sense of closure. The problem was found, the product was recalled, the story is over. The omission of the full context can prevent the public from seeing a single recall not as an isolated incident, but as a symptom of a much larger problem. The final technique is maybe the most confusing because it feels designed to make you want to give up. This is the use of contradictory narratives to shift blame and muddy the waters so thoroughly that the public doesn't know who to hold accountable. Let's stick with food safety. The contradictory narratives are in a constant, dizzying dance. Narrative A is the consumer responsibility narrative. This is the story that places the burden of safety squarely on you. You're told to wash your hands, use separate cutting boards, cook meat to the right temperature, and be careful with raw foods. If you get sick, the unspoken implication is that you failed. You didn't follow the rules. This narrative is pushed heavily in public service announcements. Then, when a massive outbreak happens that can be blamed on millions of people all forgetting how to cook, at the same time, the story instantly pivots. Narrative B is the bad apple narrative. Suddenly, the problem isn't you. It's a single rogue company. We hear about a single rogue company, or it's a specific farm or a dirty processing plant. The FDA or USDA swoops in, an investigation is launched, and a recall is issued. The company is the villain, the government is the hero, and the rest of the industry is presumed safe. The system, we're told, worked by catching the bad guy. See the contradiction? On one hand, you're personally responsible for your safety. On the other, when the system fails on a grand scale, it's an isolated corporate failure. The public is bounced between these two narratives like a ping pong ball. The message depends entirely on what best protects the overall system from scrutiny. If the problem is small, it's your fault. If it's big, it's a lone company's fault. What's often missing from this back and forth is narrative C. The idea that the regulatory framework itself might be insufficient. The constant shifting between blaming the consumer and blaming a single company helps ensure that the rules of the game aren't the primary focus of the public anger. This creates a fog of confusion, leaving people feeling powerless and uncertain about where the real danger lies. This is the essence of that gaslit feeling. A reality so confusing, you start to doubt your own ability to make sense of it. These techniques aren't just abstract concepts. They have a real psychological impact. The cumulative effect of framing, omission, and contradictory narratives is what creates that distinct gaslit feeling. First, it fosters self-doubt and self-blame. When an official source tells you the food supply is fundamentally safe, but then you or a family member gets violently ill from a contaminated product, your brain struggles to resolve the two realities. The official narrative from a position of authority contradicts your lived experience. The easiest way to resolve that conflict is often to blame yourself. I must have done something wrong. I didn't wash the lettuce well enough. This protects the system from criticism by turning the victim into the potential perpetrator. Second, it cultivates apathy. The constant barrage of confusing information is mentally exhausting. After hearing that eggs are bad, then good, then bad again, many people simply give up. This can lead to learned helplessness, a state where, after experiencing repeated stressful situations you can't control, you just stop trying. When the public is convinced that understanding health and safety is beyond them, they stop demanding better regulations or more transparency. Apathy becomes a form of consent. Finally, it conditions us to trust authority over our own evidence. Through sheer repetition, reassuring mantras become illusory truths. This is a documented phenomenon where people believe a statement is true simply because they've heard it over and over. The simple, comforting official narrative, the system is safe, becomes more powerful than the complex, disturbing data. 48 million sick. We're trained to dismiss alarming statistics as anomalies and defer to the reassuring voice of authority, even when the story doesn't quite add up. So friends, what can we do? We're bombarded by these techniques daily, and not just in our personal relationships. I believe the gaslighting by the government and mass media has become so normal. It's what makes us numb and conditioned to it in our personal relationships. So, the solution isn't to fall into paranoia or reject all official information. The solution is to become a more critical consumer of that information. It's about building an immunity to these techniques by understanding them. Because if you're here, then like me, you're tired of being misled and lied to by everyone. It's about taking back control of your own perception. Now, you don't need a degree in psychology or journalism to do this. You just need a simple mental toolkit. Think of it as a citizen's audit. 4 questions to run by any piece of information you get, whether it's a news report or a government press release. Question number 1. What facts are being emphasized? Look at the headline and the first few sentences. What's the core message they want you to walk away with? Is it the system working? A bad apple was found, or you need to be more careful? Identifying the main frame is the first step. Question number 2, what facts are missing? This is the most important question. If it's a recall, are they telling you how long the product was on shelves? If it's a list of risky foods, are they providing context on why it's risky? Look for the holes. What's left out is usually more telling than what's put in. Question number 3, what is the intended emotional response? Information is rarely neutral. Is the message designed to make you feel reassured? Or is it meant to make you a little scared of one specific thing? To divert your attention from a systemic issue? Is it designed to make you feel guilty? Separating the facts from the intended feeling is key. Question number 4, are double standards being applied? This is the accountability check. When a consumer makes a mistake, they're often blamed for being careless. When a massive corporation makes a mistake on an industrial scale, is it framed as an unfortunate, complex accident? Watching for double standards reveals where the power really lies. Running information through this 4-question audit, you shift from being a passive recipient to an active analyst. You start to see the architecture of the message, and it loses its invisible power. The feeling of being gaslit by people and the institutions meant to protect you is real, and it's not okay. It often stems from predictable communication patterns that prioritize managing the story and controlling the narrative over delivering the unfiltered truth. They rely on framing, omission, and a delusional dance of contradictory blame. The outcome is a public kept in a state of manageable anxiety, concerned enough to comply, but not angry enough to demand fundamental change. Fuck that. You're not crazy. Your confusion is a rational response to a manipulative information environment. The most powerful step you can take is to understand the game. Remember, knowledge is immunity. The fog is thick, but it's not impenetrable. You have the tools to see through it. It's time to wake up and use them. Thanks for being here and for listening. Please like and subscribe. And until next time, friends, keep healing. See ya.